You are here because you feel a draft. It is the coldness of reality penetrating through the cracks of your cozy illusions regarding justice and kindness. You are accustomed to believing that the world is a safe playground where good behavior is rewarded with candy. Wake up. The world is a biological battlefield where value is not granted, but seized. If you do not manage your own value, you become fodder. You are a battery for the ambitions of others, a donor for social parasites. Friedrich Nietzsche did not offer you consolation. He offered you a surgical knife to excise the slave within yourself. Today, we dissect the mechanics of submission and dominance. I will not pity you. I will show you how your own biochemistry works against you and how to turn fear into a tool of power. Chapter 1. The effect of illusory safety 1. The collision phase. The boardroom on the 40th floor smelled of the freshness of expensive ozone and fear. John, a leading analyst for a hedge fund, felt the collar of his shirt digging into his throat. Sitting opposite him was Arthur, a man whose silence weighed more than the shouts of everyone else. Arthur did not look at the papers. He looked at John, frozen in the master of space pose, elbows spread wide, fingers barely touching the edge of the table. The silence stretched for 12 seconds. In the world of high social predation, this is an eternity. Your report, John. Arthur's voice was quiet, almost a whisper, which forced John to lean forward, involuntarily adopting a submissive posture. It smells of desperation. You tried so hard to please us that you forgot to be useful. John felt a microspasm twitch the corner of his mouth. He wants to justify himself. His brain is feverishly searching for arguments to restore justice. But I analyzed all the risks, John began. Interruption through a gesture. Arthur simply raised one eyebrow and John went silent mid-sentence. You did not analyze risks. You analyzed how not to get hit over the head, and that is the position of a victim. 2. The psychological X-ray phase. Arthur uses classic cognitive suppression. By creating an information vacuum through a prolonged pause, he forces John's amygdala to generate cortisol. In a state of uncertainty, the brain seeks social support and, failing to find it, begins to yield positions, trying to fill the silence with meaningless babble. This is an attack on self-worth. As soon as John began to justify himself, he confirmed Arthur's hierarchical superiority. From the perspective of ethology, John exposed his throat. His neurochemistry right now is a cocktail of stress hormones that block the prefrontal cortex, depriving him of the capacity for strategic thinking. 3. The psychological precedent phase. In 1961, Stanley Milgram conducted his famous experiment at Yale University. Subjects, teachers, administered electric shocks to students simply because a person in a white coat, an authority, told them, "The experiment requires that you continue." John is now Milgram's subject. For him, Arthur is the figure in the white coat. John obeys not logic, but symbols of power. He believes that Arthur has the right to judge him because Arthur behaves as if this right were granted to him biologically. This is the illusion of legitimate dominance. 4. The counterstrike phase. Nietzsche's lesson here is simple. Your value is not in what you have done, but in how much power you can maintain under pressure. To seize the initiative, John should have used radical pragmatism instead of justifications, mirrored silence, or, even more effectively, false vulnerability. Lesson number 1, never fill a pause created by an aggressor. The person who speaks first after an accusation has lost the round. If John had leaned back in his chair, copying Arthur's posture, and said, "Your assessment of my motivation is interesting," But let us return to the profitability figures. They do not have emotions. The hierarchy would have leveled out. He would have returned Arthur from the role of judge to the role of partner. 5. The sensory immersion phase. The air in the office became cold and dry. Only the faint hum of the climate control system was audible, resembling the noise of a ventilator. John's reflection in the polished surface of the table looked like a blurry gray spot, a metaphor for his vanishing subjectivity. Arthur, however, seemed like a monolith carved from the same cold stone as this entire business center. Chapter 2. The Destruction of Reality. Gaslighting in Daily Life. 1. The Collision Phase. Saturday evening. The apartment is flooded with the soft light of a floor lamp. It smells of brewed tea and the faint scent of Elena's expensive perfume. Her husband, Mark, has just returned from a meeting with friends that they had agreed upon a week ago. Mark enters the living room expecting a quiet evening, but the silence in the room vibrates. Elena sits in a chair, staring at a single point. She does not move. The silence lasts exactly long enough for Mark to feel the first prick of causeless guilt. "Did something happen?" Mark asks. Elena slowly turns her gaze toward him, in which a deep, almost physical disappointment is read. "Nothing. Go to sleep. You had so much fun without me. But we discussed this on Monday. You said it was a great idea." A light smirk, a pause, a tilt of the head. "I did not say that, Mark. You have again invented a reality convenient for yourself. You simply left, knowing that I felt bad after the call from my mother, and now you are trying to convince me that I gave my consent. This is frightening. Your memory is becoming selective." Mark freezes. Images of Monday flash in his head. He definitely remembers her smile. Or does he not? At this moment, his confidence in his own feelings begins to crumble like dry sand. 2. The psychological X-ray phase. Helena is applying gaslighting, a form of psychological terror aimed at destroying the victim's faith in their own adequacy. She creates an information vacuum by denying obvious facts of the past. At the physiological level, Mark experiences a sharp release of cortisol. His brain enters a state of cognitive dissonance. Memory says one thing, while the significant attachment object says another. In this battle, the object often wins because the biological fear of being expelled from the pack, the family, is stronger than logic. Elena transmits false vulnerability, masking her aggression as the resentment of a victim. She seizes the role of moral judge. 3. The psychological precedent phase. In the 1950s, psychologist Solomon Asch conducted an experiment on conformity. A group of people was shown lines of different lengths. All participants except one were Confederates, and intentionally gave the wrong answer. In 75% of cases, the real subject agreed with the obvious lie of the group, betraying their own eyes just to avoid opposing the majority. Mark is now Ash's subject. For him, Elena is the entire majority at once. She forces him to renounce his own memory for the sake of maintaining peace. If he agrees, his value in this relationship will drop to 0. He will become plasticine. 4. The counter-strike phase. Nietzsche said, "Your conscience must become your mirror, not the face of another." To survive, Mark must apply radical pragmatism. His task is not to argue, "I remember," is the position of one justifying themselves, but to fix reality as an external object. Lesson number 2. Never prove to an aggressor that you are right. Establish the fact as an axiom that does not require discussion. If reality is attacked, terminate communication. Strategic response. I see that you are upset, but I know for certain that we discussed this. If you have decided to change your attitude toward this fact now, that is your right, but I will not accept guilt for something I did not commit. I am going to rest. Turning around and leaving the conflict zone is a demonstration of will and a refusal of the role of a resource. 5. The sensory immersion phase. The room suddenly becomes too stuffy. The ticking of the wall clock turns into the blows of a hammer on an anvil. The shadow from Elena's chair stretches across the floor, resembling a predatory spot ready to swallow the remnants of Mark's common sense. The air feels thick, like paste, preventing a deep breath. In this silence, the value of Mark's personality either crystallizes into a diamond or turns into dust. If you recognized yourself or your past reactions in the described patterns or behaviors of the characters, put a plus in the comments. This is not a sign of weakness, but the first signal that your brain has begun the process of deconstructing old habits. Chapter 3. Triangulation and Social Suffocation 1. The collision phase. Saturday dinner at a country house. Old friends are around the table. Leo feels safe until his close friend Stephen takes the floor. Stephen is the soul of the party, a master of toasts and hidden daggers. Do you know what I value most in Leo? Stephen makes a theatrical pause, scanning those present. His stability. While Marcus, a nod toward another successful friend, and I were taking risks, opening branches in Asia and going bankrupt, Leo sat quietly in his cozy marketing department for 5 years. Marcus, do you remember how we almost lost everything in Bangkok? That is drive. And Leo, he is our quiet shore. Marcus laughs, patting Leo on the shoulder. The gesture is patronizing, humiliating. Yes, Leo, you are lucky that you do not have such ambitions as we do, Marcus adds. At least you sleep peacefully. Leo feels something inside him snap. His pulse quickens, his palms sweat. He wants to talk about his achievements, but he realizes, in this coordinate system, he has already been designated as the quiet failure. I simply value balance, Leo tries to interject. Stephen interrupts him with a chuckle without looking him in the eyes. Of course, buddy. Balance is a code word for, I am afraid to change anything. Marcus, tell us instead how you closed that deal in Singapore. 2. The psychological X-ray phase. Stephen uses triangulation, the introduction of a third party, Marcus, into the dialogue to create competition or emphasize the insignificance of the victim. He creates a hierarchy where he and Marcus are predatory winners, while Leo is service staff or background. Cognitive suppression is at work here through a complement, stability, poison, cowardice is injected. Leo's neurochemistry at this moment records a fall in social status. Cortisol and norepinephrine are produced. The freeze reaction blocks his ability for a witty response. He feels unnecessary at this celebration of life, even though he was the one who invited everyone to his home. 3. The psychological precedent phase. In the 1970s, psychologist Henri Tajfel developed social identity theory. He proved that people need only a minimal reason to divide into us, the in-group, and them, the out-group. Moreover, us will always belittle them to raise their own self-esteem and build cohesion. Stephen artificially created an in-group of successful risk-taking guys, throwing Leo into the out-group of weaklings. Marcus succumbed to this impulse instantly. The biological desire to be on the side of the strong outweighed years of friendship. 4. The counter-strike phase. According to Nietzsche, friendship is the creation of the overman, not the collective consumption of herd illusions. If friends use you as a stand for their crowns, They are not friends. They are parasites. Leo must use the information vacuum and radical pragmatism. His mistake is the attempt to justify himself. Lesson number 3. When they try to triangulate you, do not enter the triangle. Break it by attacking the structure of the joke itself. Strategic move. Leo should have calmly waited for the end of the tirade, slowly taken a sip of wine, and said, looking directly into Stephen's eyes, "Interesting, Stephen. This is the third time this evening you have tried to assert yourself at the expense of my calmness. Are you so eager to prove to Marcus that you are in his league that you are ready to use me as a springboard? It looks restless." By doing this, Leo exposes the manipulation and shows Stephen's true vulnerability, his thirst for approval from Marcus. 5. The sensory immersion phase. The candlelight on the table suddenly seems too yellow, sickly. The sound of cutlery against the plates resembles the clatter of surgical instruments. Outside the window, the wind rustles, breaking dry branches. Nature gets rid of that which has stopped growing. A heavy smell of expensive tobacco and cheap vanity hangs in the air. Leo realizes this chair beneath him is the only place where he can currently hold his territory. Chapter 4. The Trap of False Responsibility. 1. The Collision Phase. Sunday evening at the home of Sarah's mother. The air is saturated with the scent of jasmine and old books. Sarah stopped by for only an hour to bring groceries, but her mother, Martha, has already transitioned to her main strategy, emotional suffocation. "Of course, leave." Martha sits in a chair, pressing her hand to her chest. Her voice is weak, her breathing intermittent. "You have your own life, your own important affairs. Do not pay attention to the pains in my heart. I will somehow crawl to the kitchen myself." Sarah freezes in the doorway. Her body is tense, her shoulders raised. A classic defensive reaction. "Mom, we agreed that I would stop by for a short time. I have an important conference tomorrow." Martha closes her eyes. A mask of a martyr freezes on her face. "A conference? Of course. Work was always more important to you than family. Your father was the same. Go. I will just lie in the dark. If it gets really bad, the neighbors, perhaps, will hear." Sarah feels the cold poison of guilt spreading inside. She is no longer thinking about the conference. She is thinking about what a bad daughter she is at this moment. 2. The psychological X-ray phase. Martha uses projective identification. She projects onto Sarah the image of a cruel egoist until Sarah begins to feel and behave accordingly. This is pure emotional blackmail, fog, fear, obligation, guilt. From the perspective of neurochemistry, Sarah is in a state of cortisol captivity. The brain perceives the mother's disapproval as a threat to survival, social isolation from a significant adult. Martha, however, may experience a paradoxical release of dopamine at this moment. She feels power. Through her weakness, she manages her daughter's strength. This is false vulnerability elevated to an absolute. 3. The psychological precedent phase. In psychology, this phenomenon is described by the Karpman drama triangle. Martha takes the position of the victim, designating Sarah as the persecutor. The goal of the victim is to force the persecutor to become the rescuer. It is also appropriate here to recall Martin Seligman's theory of learned helplessness. Martha has trained this skill for decades to guarantee herself the resources of those around her. She does not can, she not wants, because her helplessness brings her more dividends than independence. 4. The counter-strike phase. Nietzsche wrote, "He who cannot command himself must obey." If Sarah does not learn to command her sense of guilt, she will remain a tool in Martha's hands for the rest of her life. Lesson number 4. Your compassion must not be a sanction for your destruction. If help requires the abandonment of your personality, it is not help, it is a sacrifice. Strategic move. Sarah must apply radical pragmatism and the fogging technique. Mom, I see that you are upset. I am sorry that you feel this way. I have left the medicine on the table and will call you tomorrow morning. Kisses. She acknowledges her mother's feelings but does not change her plans. She does not argue with the accusation. She ignores it. This returns the responsibility for her own state to Martha. 5. The sensory immersion phase. The room becomes unbearably cramped. The walls, hung with old photographs, seem to move in, trying to crush Sarah. The scent of jasmine turns into a heavy, cloying spirit of stagnation. The ticking of an old clock in the next room is audible, counting down the minutes of life that Sarah is ready to sacrifice to another person's whim. A cold draft from the hallway reminds her of the freedom that is only one step beyond the threshold. We have reached the finale. This is the moment when all masks are dropped and the mechanisms of social control are exposed. Chapter 5 is dedicated to the highest form of psychological resilience, the integration of the shadow and the transformation of your value into an absolute constant that does not depend on the approval or censure of others. Chapter 5. The Will to Power, Triumph over Hierarchy. 1. The Collision Phase. An evening reception at an elite private club. James, a man who has built his reputation over the years, finds himself at the center of a public execution. Robert, the charismatic leader of their social circle, decides to put James in his place in front of all those present. "You know," Robert says loudly, interrupting the general conversation, "I have always admired James. He tries so desperately to seem like one of us in our circle." Robert takes a sip of wine, looking at James with lazy superiority. "James, tell everyone how you practiced manners in front of the mirror so that we would not notice your, shall we say, modest origin." An icy silence falls over the room. Everyone looks at James. His pulse pounds in his temples. He feels dozens of pairs of eyes directed at him, expecting his shame. This is a moment of social death or rebirth. James does not look away. He does not blush. He takes a step toward Robert, intruding into his personal space by 10 centimeters more than etiquette requires. "My manners, Robert, are a tool, not the essence. However, your need to discuss my past in front of everyone is a clear sign that your present frightens you. You are so afraid of losing leadership that you bite those who simply stand nearby. It looks cheap." 2. The psychological X-ray phase. Robert applied destructive devaluation. His goal is to destroy James's social face, using his past as a lever. This is an attack on the basic human need for belonging. From the perspective of physiology, James experienced an attack on the serotonin system. When social status falls, the level of serotonin decreases, which leads to a depressive state and a slumped posture. However, James used cognitive reframing. He did not accept the role of the exposed imposter, but imposed on Robert the role of an insecure tyrant. He seized dopaminergic control, turning the aggressor into an object of observation. 3. The psychological precedent phase. Here we see the work of dominance theory and biological markers of status. In experiments by ethologist Franz de Waal on primates, it was noted the alpha male is not the one who is the strongest, but the one who knows how to remain cool under pressure and build alliances. It is also appropriate to recall Julian Rotter's concept of locus of control. James possesses an internal locus of control. He believes that his value is determined by himself, not by Robert's opinion. Robert, by attacking, demonstrates a hidden external locus. His self-esteem depends on how much he can humiliate another. 4. The counterstrike phase. Nietzsche asserted, "What does not kill me makes me stronger," but he also spoke of the revaluation of all values. James stopped playing by Robert's rules. Lesson number 5. Your value is not what they think of you. It is what you allow them to think of you. He who is not afraid to lose face gains power over those who tremble for it. Strategic decision. James applied radical pragmatism. He did not begin to defend his past. It is immutable. He attacked the motive of the attacker. When you expose the motive of a manipulator, you are doing this because you are afraid. The manipulator loses magical power over the audience. He becomes naked. 5. The sensory immersion phase. The air in the hall became dense, almost tangible, the scent of expensive perfume mixed with the smell of ozone, as if before a storm. James felt how the cold marble of the floor beneath his feet gave him the support of the entire planet. The faces of those around turned into indistinct masks, and only Robert's eyes, dilated with a trembling pupil, were reality. In this silence, James heard his own calm breathing. He won because he stopped needing their approval. A psychological investigation is completed not when the last page is read, but when you first catch yourself thinking, "I see what you are doing, and it no longer works on me." Your value is not a figure in a social rating, and not the sum of the opinions of your loved ones. It is the distance that you establish between yourself and the attempts of others to control you. Key conclusions of the Nietzsche strategy. The world is not a cradle, but a testing ground. Stop expecting justice from people. Justice is a concept for the weak, to restrain the strong. The strong create their own justice through boundaries and rules. Your vulnerability is their currency. Every time you justify yourself, seek approval, or fear offending a manipulator, you give away a part of your resource. Silence is the highest manifestation of strength. In any unclear situation where pressure is applied to you, go silent. Allow the predator to drown in their own uncertainty. Final defense algorithm. 1. Diagnosis. If you feel guilt without having committed a transgression, you are being manipulated. 2. Distance. Terminate the supply of emotions. The manipulator needs your tears, anger, or fear. Become a gray stone, cold, boring, and impenetrable. 3. Interception. Return the responsibility. Not, "Why are you doing this to me?" but "I see that you are trying to induce guilt in me. It will not work." Your new rule. I am not a resource. I am not a tool. I am not an addition to another person's ego. My value is absolute and is not subject to discussion in the court of the opinions of others. You are no longer a victim in the food chain. You are an observer who knows the rules of the game. And now that you know how the mechanisms of control work, you are free. Either you manage your value, or those who surround you use it in their own interests. The choice is made. Knowledge of the mechanisms of the psyche is your main freedom. Subscribe so that together we can explore the hidden facets of human behavior, and be sure to write in the comments which psychological pattern or strategy we will analyze next time. Let us seek the truth together.